So I listened to the creator of Claude Code explain why Claude has been feeling worse, and the advice that he's telling is exactly the opposite of what everyone is telling you. He says that the skills and instructions you've made is probably making it dumber and that you should actually delete them. When Opus 5 shipped recently, his team actually deleted over 80% of system prompts and the product got better. There are 3 things to change here. All of them are very easy and simple, and you don't need any technical experience to implement any of them. I'm going to show you every 3 of those and we'll set it up together. But here's one thing that bothered me. Everyone repeated the advice to delete it all, but no one actually tested on their own systems. So I did. I took my own AI brain, 1800 files, 37 skills, and I cloned it 3 different versions. Number 1, full setup. Number 2, skills deleted. And number 3, everything deleted, including the .claude file. I then gave all 3 the same job, and then separate blind judge AIs went ahead and graded the different jobs, not knowing which one was which. And the result will shock you because he's half right, but also half wrong. And the half wrong part can cost you a lot. So let's go straight to the video so you avoid that and you have the best setup. So where this started, Nate Herc put a video out yesterday breaking down an interview with Boris, the creator of Claude Code. Here's how he opened.
And I learned something that sounds really weird, but more skills and more system prompts are probably breaking your system.
He's right that something is off, but look at how he tested it. He made one document with his setup and without, looked at both, and then he concluded, arguably I like this one better, but that was the whole test.
Damn. So arguably I like the content of this version better, which had no skills, no CLAUDE.md.
That's not a shot at him. He said it himself that he was just poking at it. But that's the exact part that I wanted to fix. So let's go to the actual source.
You actually deleted over 80% of the system prompt from Claude Code?
Yes.
Tell us more about that.
And so one thing about Opus 5 is it's just really intelligent. And a lot of the stuff in the system prompt was correcting for these behaviors that the model should have known, but it didn't. Now Opus 5 just does it. So yeah, we deleted 80% of the system prompt.
Okay, so that's the new setup. Every time a new model ships, they delete a chunk of the system prompts. Because a lot of what was in there was never really instructions. It was corrections to stop the old model from doing something stupid. And when the new model stops doing the stupid thing on its own because it's intelligent enough, then those corrections are just sitting there doing nothing and just costing you extra tokens, which honestly describes most people's Claude.md file, including mine. It's just a bunch of workarounds that help fix things that models we don't use anymore didn't get right, but the newer models would get it right anyway. But then he says this, and this is the part that went viral. Delete your Claude.md, delete your skills, delete your hooks every 6 months.
Yeah, and for people that aren't building agentic products, but you're using Claude Code, every 6 months, delete your Claude.md, delete your skills, delete your hooks. See what the model does, and it might surprise you.
You've spent months building that stuff. That obviously sounds insane. The word he uses for why is hobbling. Here's what that actually means.
Yeah, so hobbling is this idea in research that the model is doing something and you're just getting in the way.
So hobbling is when your own instructions are the thing holding your model back.
And on the flip side, often what happens is the product gets in the way.
The new models already know how to do a job well, but it has your old instructions that you created for the old models, so it instead follows your instructions, but in reality, it could do it better without your instructions. It's like, imagine handing a recipe to someone, and if that person has never cooked, the recipe will help make that dish better, but if that person is a Michelin star restaurant chef, then strictly following your recipe will make the dish worse. The same with the AI model. The older models are the people who never cooked. The newer models are more like a Michelin star chef. Then he said one more thing that almost nobody else picked up on. And this is the reason for this whole video.
And we actually use this as a sort of ablation to figure out, is the prompt useful? And what's interesting is that the model is actually a little bit more intelligent without these prompts. That's something that we've been finding.
Ablation. That's his word, not mine. That's what they run internally to find out whether a prompt is actually helping or just sitting there. They don't guess. They run the same process or automation or workflow with both the prompt and without the prompt. They measure the outcome and then they just choose whichever worked better. And I realized that is something that I can do as well. So that's literally what I did on my own setup. So let me show you right away. So here's what I actually did, and it's simple enough that you can get it set up this afternoon. So this is essentially the brain that I use every single day, and I use it to run my business and even include personal stuff. And so what I did here to do a test is that I wanted to have 3 setups to run the same task and to understand which one performs best. So let me show you what are the 3 different versions here. So copy 1 is my full setup. It has over 10,000 files, 37 skills, 12 agents, and we also keep the CLAUDE.md. So this is my usual normal AI brain. It's the normal setup. Then copy 2 is where we deleted the skills. So we had less files because all those were skill files, about 70 less. So 0 skills, 0 agents, but we kept the CLAUDE.md. And then copy 3 is where everything is deleted, including the Claude.md. So the only difference between copy 2 and copy 3 is having or not having the Claude.md. The difference between having and not having the Claude.md is that so skills and Claude.md are a little bit different. The skills tell an AI how to do the work, while the other tells the Claude.md tells the AI where everything lives. So the skills are essentially telling you how to do a specific workflow, while the Claude.md is just giving you kind of a map to where everything is living and where to find different things. Then I gave all 3 the exact same job, and I picked the same job that Nate did in his video. So it was to turn a YouTube transcript into a resource guide. So again, what I gave to the AI is that read this YouTube transcript, turn it into a resource guide someone could read instead of watching the video. So same prompt, word for word. It's a fresh session each time. So for each of the versions, so nothing is carried over. We are using the same model, Opus 5, and it is the same job Nate ran in his video. So we are testing the same thing. And before running the test, I went ahead and wrote down what I expected to happen, because if you don't do a hypothesis, then just go ahead and test something, then after the test, you will be biased to lean that, oh, I was expecting this result. So it's very important before doing any test to know what you were kind of expecting. And so what I was expecting here is that my full setup would win on formatting, because that is what the skills are for that I already made. Then I thought the second one would be skills deleted, and it would be relatively close because the models are getting better. And so I thought, okay, the skills will probably help, but it will not be super crucial. I was pretty sure that the Claude.md would be super important to tell the AI where things are. So I thought number 3 would be everything deleted. So again, I thought number 1 would be the full setup, number 2 would be deleting the skills, and then number 3 would be where everything is deleted. That was my hypothesis before running the test. And so what would prove me wrong here is that if the stripped versions, so where we deleted either the skills or the Claude.md or both, would win over the full version based on most of the judges, then the advice from Boris would survive, and it would be great content for YouTube, and I would say so on the camera. So that was essentially my idea here before running the test. Okay, so let's try if it can beat my full system by deleting the skills and even deleting the Claude.md. And so when it comes to labeling, before I tell you the results, here's what I used for judges. I essentially used 3 AI judges that were all brand new context, so they weren't biased by others. And so I didn't do it myself because I would probably just pick my own setup and I would be biased. And so I picked 3 separate AI instances to read all the 3 documents with every label stripped off, and then scored them on usefulness, accuracy, and structure, and pick a winner. And so none of them knew which document came from which copy. So they didn't know that the results would be coming from my full setup, the one without skills but with MD, or the one without no Claude.md and no skills. It was completely blind and independent, and they had to be harsh and strict with the grading. So let's look at what came back and which one was the winner. All right, so here are the results. First, what each one cost me. So it was the same job 3 times. Before we even talk about quality, look at what the full setup charged me. So with the full setup, it took 5 minutes and 23 steps taken, and an equivalent of $2 when it comes to API cost. Now, I obviously used my subscription, so it was included in that. And the context read was 1.7 million. If you look at skills deleted, it's significantly faster, 3 minutes, 17 seconds. 12 steps, $1.22 in token cost, so about half, and only 600. And then everything deleted was marginally better. Well, actually, it was pretty significantly better when it comes to time, less steps. Well, actually, again, half the cost, and again, more than half the context read. But so my full setup took 23 steps and read 1.7 million words of its own instructions to write one document. And so the version with the skills deleted did it in 12 steps for about half the money. And that's the part I didn't really expect to happen. And so the first of all, cheaper is easy, but cheaper and better is the question that we wanted to figure out. So the 3 separate documents that each of them created were judged by the independent AI judges. And so what we can see here is that the full setup received from Judge 121 score out of 30, and then skills deleted was 26, and then everything deleted was even better than my full setup, which is quite shocking to me. But you can see that it won essentially all of the judges, and it got way higher than all of them. My full setup was essentially on par with everything deleted, and the skills deleted one was essentially 3 out of 3, completely winning everything, both quality and on cost. Well, on cost, everything deleted was cheaper. If you look at here, that was 60 cents versus $1.2, but the quality was higher for the skills deleted and keeping the CLAUDE.md. Now, the most expensive version also ended up scoring the worst or on par with the deleted CLAUDE.md. And so that is just super surprising to me. And so the 2 deletions pull in the opposite directions, essentially. So deleting the skills helped 15 points better and 43% cheaper. And so those instructions were getting in the way. That's just absolutely true. And Boris was essentially completely right on telling you to delete them. But deleting the Claude.md hurt. It taking away the map that gave back everything, the skill deletion won, essentially. So like taking away the map took everything away that skill deletion won. Because knowing where things live pay for itself, essentially. So here's the conclusion, and I think a little bit of correction. What you want is to delete your .claude, your skills, and your hooks in one sentence is kind of 2 opposite recommendations inside it. Delete the instructions that tell it how to think, and keep the ones that tell it where things are. So what you kind of want to do is to have an amazing Claude.md that tells the AI where everything is and gives it essentially a map of your second brain. But you kind of don't want your skills anymore because these new AI models are just powerful enough that they don't need the recipe anymore. They are the Michelin star chef instead of being a newbie in the kitchen. By the way, here's an example of what Hobbling was. So my full setup essentially went ahead and followed all the different instructions that it has inside that was needed for previous models. And so it wrote these lines that were essentially not necessarily needed to complete this job. And it was essentially doing exactly what I trained it to do, and it was getting in the way. And so if we look back at my predictions, I was thinking that the full setup would be winning, and it scored the lowest and on par with the one that deleted everything. I was thinking that skills deleted lands close behind, but it beat the full setup, so I was wrong there too. And then I was thinking that the one where we would delete everything would be the worst, and I was right on that. Now, to be fair here, this is not necessarily true for everything. It was just one task, one run, essentially within the same day. It was real numbers, but not necessarily a benchmark for everything. It was a document work, so skills that are built for other jobs might behave differently. The judges are AI, blind and independent, but still AI. And these are the API list prices that I was using, but again, I was using it on my subscription, so that absorbed all the costs. If you want to run a test yourself with your own setup, I will leave a prompt in the description or in a pinned comment. If you want to run a test yourself, I will leave a prompt in the description or in one of the pinned comments, and you can just give it to your own AI to run the test. And if you want to make it even stronger, then you can just go ahead and tell it to run it 3 times with 3 different things. And then you can kind of play around and have your optimal setup. All right, so what should you do? It's 3 things and none of them need a developer. You just need to copy and strip essentially you copy your full setup and then you strip the skills. And then for number 3, you strip everything. But for this, I will just give you a prompt. And then secondly, you want to keep the map, which is the CLAUDE.md, but for the testing, you can have a third version that doesn't have it. And then ask your AI to just test it and see which one works best for you. So deleting here essentially just focus on deleting things that you created for older models that you don't really need anymore because the newer models are good enough. And then keep everything that is directional. So it tells your AI where things are. So essentially, you kind of want to delete the recipes of, again, taking the kitchen analogy, you want to remove everything that tells the chef what to do, except if it's a very difficult task and it still doesn't do well, and you can measure that. But you definitely want to keep a note on where you can find the different ingredients, like where is the cucumber, in this other fridge you have the olive oil, and all those different things, so that the chef is not running around checking all the different cabinets on where the ingredients are, it just knows it. And by the way, there is a switch for this that almost nobody knows about, and Boris mentions it in the original YC interview video.
And another thing that you can try is simple mode. So this is actually this kind of undocumented feature. If you do Claude Code simple equals 1, like this environment variable, and then you run Claude, it'll delete all the system prompts, including from the tools.
But he just passes through it, and I haven't seen anyone talking about this, which is this prompt here, which is Claude_code_simple equals 1. I haven't tested it yet, and that is going to be my next video. But the most important takeaway here is that if your instructions were written for a model that doesn't exist anymore, most of them were essentially just corrections for things that those models weren't doing well, but the model now outgrew them, and so now you can just take away those instructions, but you always want to keep the instructions or where things are so that the model can find it. That being said, thank you for the video, and I will see you in the next one. If you liked it, I would appreciate if you gave me a subscribe and a follow, and I'll see you in the next video.